Complete the following Lewis structures. Indicate any unshared pairs of electrons and formal charges. The formulas represent neutral molecules. Okay, let's start with A. So the formula for A is C2, H3, and O. So we start with the valence electrons. Carbons, you have 2 carbons. Each one is 4. Next is hydrogens. We have 3 hydrogens. Each one is 1, 3. Next is nitrogen. There's only 1 and each one is 5. And then oxygen finally. There's only 1 oxygen. Each one is 6. So 6. 11, 16, 22. Our structure is going to have 22 valence electrons. Okay, so carbon surrounded by 3 hydrogens. Hydrogen is period 1, so it can only take 2 electrons. So the octet rule does not apply to hydrogens. Next, we have a carbon connected to the other carbon, then nitrogen, and then oxygen. Okay, so we follow the octet rules. Yep. Right now, that carbon only has 4 around it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a double bond there. Okay, a triple bond. So now I have 2, 4, 6, 8 around that carbon. Next, I have 2, 4, 6, 8 around that nitrogen. So that tells me that I have 3 lone pairs on that oxygen. Okay, so that has an octet, the nitrogen has an octet, the carbon has an octet, and that carbon has an octet of electrons around it. What about the valence electrons? Let's count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. So that then would be the correct Lewis structure for C2H3NO. Unshared pairs of electrons. We have 3 unshared pairs of electrons on oxygen, none on nitrogen, none on the 2 carbons. Formal charges. That carbon is 4 minus 4, that is 0. That one is 4 minus 4 is 0. That nitrogen is, neutral nitrogen is 5 minus the number of electrons around it is 4. So that has a formal charge of positive 1. Yep. What about that oxygen there? Oxygen neutral is 6 minus around it you have 7. So 6 minus 7 is negative 1. And of course the formal charges on those hydrogens is 0, 0, 0, 0. One too many zeros. Okay, so we do have a +1 on nitrogen and a +1 on oxygen. So those two the negative 1 and the positive 1, they cancel, so we have a neutral molecule. Next, B. Okay, we start with a formula. 3 carbons, C3. How many hydrogens? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. H7. We have 1 nitrogen. We have 1 oxygen. C3H7NO. The valence electrons. Carbon, there are 3. Each one is 4. 12. Hydrogens, there are 7. Each one is 1. So 7. Nitrogen, there's only 1. Each one is 5. And then oxygen, there's only 1, and each oxygen is 6, so 6, 19, 24, 30. Our Lewis structure is going to have 30 valence electrons. Okay, so carbon surrounded by 3 hydrogens, then carbon, we have a hydrogen there, and then nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon, hydrogen, hydrogen, hydrogen. Okay, that carbon has an octet around it. That carbon does not have an octet around it, 2, 4, 6. So I'm going to form a double bond between that carbon and that nitrogen. That nitrogen has 2, 4, 6, 8 around it. That carbon has 2, 4, 6, 8 around it. That oxygen has 2. So therefore it needs to get 3 unshared pairs around it. Okay, that then is our Lewis structure. Let's check if we have the correct number of valence electrons. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30 valence electrons. And carbons, the nitrogen, and the oxygen all have an octet, so therefore that's a valid Lewis structure. Formal charges, that's 0, 0, 0. That carbon is 4 minus 4 is 0. That carbon is 4 minus 4 is 0. That nitrogen is, neutral nitrogen is 5 minus the number of around it is 4. So 5 minus 4 is positive 1. That oxygen, neutral oxygen is 6. Around it we have 7 electrons. So 6 minus 7 is negative 1. And that carbon has a formal charge of 0. So negative 1 on oxygen, positive 1 on nitrogen, and overall we have a net charge of 0, and that makes our molecule neutral.